Eager for a thrill, five friends decided to spend a night in the Ashen Hotel, a once grand establishment now abandoned and rumored to be haunted. The hotel, with its decaying elegance and air of forgotten stories, stood isolated on the outskirts of their small town, a relic of the past that few dared to approach. Armed with flashlights and a sense of invincibility, Alex, Casey, Jamie, Nora, and Sam broke through the rusted gate under the cover of darkness. The hotel loomed above them, its broken windows like dark, watching eyes, and its silent facade a challenge to their bravado. As they entered the lobby, their lights revealed peeling wallpaper, shattered glass, and the debris of years of neglect. Laughter and jokes filled the air, a mask for the unease that settled in their stomachs. They explored the ground floor, daring each other to venture into the darker corners, each step taking them further into the heart of the hotel. The night's entertainment began with a game of hide-and-seek, the hotel's vast, empty rooms providing the perfect backdrop. Alex was it, counting loudly as the others scattered, their footsteps echoing through the silent corridors. The game took a turn when Alex found Casey, not hiding, but standing frozen in the hallway, staring at something unseen. Casey whispered of a shadow that moved on its own, of whispers that filled the air, but Alex saw nothing. Shaken, they decided to regroup, the thrill of their adventure souring. As they searched for the others, the hotel seemed to shift around them, hallways stretching and doors disappearing, their familiarity with the layout unraveling. Panic rose when they found Nora, her flashlight flickering, her eyes wide with fear as she spoke of seeing her own reflection age and decay in a mirror that was now inexplicably missing. The group's resolve crumbled, the desire to leave growing urgent, but Sam and Jamie were still missing. Calls for their friends went unanswered, the hotel swallowing their voices. They split up, desperation driving them deeper into the hotel's embrace. Alex found Jamie in the ballroom, staring transfixed at the center of the dance floor where the dust swirled and gathered into the form of dancers waltzing to silent music, their forms transparent and shifting. Jamie couldn't look away, mesmerized by the spectacle, a ghostly recreation of the hotel's past glories. Casey and Nora discovered Sam in the basement, locked in a storage room, his voice hoarse from screaming for help. He spoke of feeling hands grasp at him in the dark, of a suffocating presence that whispered of untold horrors. They regrouped, determined to find an exit, but the hotel was no longer the place they had entered. The architecture mocked them, an ever-changing maze designed to confuse and entrap. Hours passed, their flashlights dimming, the darkness growing bolder. In a final, desperate bid for freedom, they found themselves in the lobby once more, the front door visible across the room. Relief was short-lived as the chandeliers above came to life, illuminating the lobby in a harsh, unnatural light. Before them, the shadows gathered, coalescing into a singular dark figure that radiated an ancient, cold anger. It spoke in a voice that echoed through the halls, a sound that seemed to come from the very walls of the hotel itself. It told of betrayal, of a grave injustice that had condemned it to the hotel, of a hunger for the living that had gone unsatisfied for too long. The friends realized too late the true nature of the Ashen Hotel. It was a prison, a tomb for something unspeakable, and they had willingly walked into its grasp. As the figure advanced, they understood that escape was impossible. The hotel desired more than to scare. It sought to consume, to claim them as its own. Their screams echoed through the night, a final testament to their fate. The Ashen Hotel stood silent once more, its hunger momentarily appeased, waiting for the next unwary souls to breach its threshold. In the town, the disappearance of the five friends became yet another tale whispered about the hotel, a cautionary story of curiosity and the darkness that dwells in forgotten places. The hotel remains, its secrets unspoken, its appetite endless. The storm had come out of nowhere, a sudden deluge that turned the roads into rivers and forced Jacob to seek refuge for the night. The only shelter for miles was an old hotel perched at the edge of a cliff overlooking the churning sea below. Its sign, battered by the wind, read, "The Cliffside Inn," the letters flickering in the storm's fury. Inside, the hotel was a maze of corridors and staircases, adorned with faded wallpaper and portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow Jacob as he passed. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and decay, a tangible reminder of the building's age and its battle against the elements. The innkeeper, a gaunt figure with hollow cheeks and eyes too sharp, handed Jacob the key to room 13, a smile curling his lips that did not reach his eyes. The room was small, the wallpaper peeling, the single window offering a view of the storm-ravaged sea. Jacob tried to settle in, but unease gnawed at him, a feeling of being watched. As night deepened, the storm outside grew more violent, the wind howling like a banshee's wail. It began with a whisper, so faint Jacob thought he imagined it, a soft murmur lost in the storm's cacophony. But then it came again, clearer this time, his name being called from the shadows. The temperature dropped, his breath visible in the air, as he searched the room for the source of the voice. The whispers grew into voices, a chorus of them, speaking in languages he couldn't understand. The portraits in the hall seemed to come alive, their expressions twisted in agony, their eyes pleading for release. Jacob tried to leave, but the door to his room wouldn't budge, the windows sealed shut against his efforts. Panic set in as the voices converged into a single, terrifying scream, the sound filling the room, vibrating in his bones. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes that were almost human, reaching out to him with fingers made of darkness. And then, silence. A silence so profound it pressed against his ears, a harbinger of something far worse. From the bathroom, water began to run, spilling over the edges of the sink, the liquid black as ink. Drawn by a force he couldn't resist, Jacob approached, the mirror above the sink reflecting not his own image, but a tableau of horror. The room behind him was filled with the apparitions from the hall, their bodies contorted, eyes empty sockets, mouths agape in silent screams. In the mirror, the innkeeper's reflection stood behind Jacob, his smile wide and grotesque. "The Cliffside Inn thanks you for your stay," he whispered, his voice a knife's edge. "Your soul will keep us company for eternity." Jacob spun around, but the room was empty, the apparitions gone. The storm outside had ceased, the first light of dawn creeping through the cracks of the sealed window. Exhausted and terrified, he collapsed, the events of the night a nightmare from which he could not awaken. When the police found him the next day, Jacob was catatonic, his eyes staring at something only he could see. The Cliffside Inn was empty, abandoned for decades, its walls crumbling, the portraits faded and covered in dust. No innkeeper, no guests, only the sea's mournful cry echoing through the empty halls. Jacob never recovered, his mind trapped in that night of horror. The Cliffside Inn remains, a beacon for the lost and the weary, its true nature hidden behind a veneer of normalcy. But those who stay, drawn by the storm or by fate, find themselves part of its history, their screams added to the chorus that haunts the halls, their souls never leaving, forever guests of the Cliffside Inn. On a whim, drawn by tales of its haunting beauty and tragic past, I booked a stay at the Grand Heirloom Hotel, nestled in the heart of a forgotten coastal town. Its reputation for being haunted was a lure for a writer like me, seeking inspiration in the embrace of the macabre. The hotel, a towering edifice of crumbling elegance, whispered secrets through its cracked facade and broken windows, a siren call to those who listened. Room 413 was to be my sanctuary, a place to immerse myself in writing, untouched by the world outside. The room, however, had plans of its own. From the moment I crossed its threshold, a sense of unease settled over me, the air thick with the scent of decay masked by the heavy perfume of old roses. As night descended, the hotel transformed. The walls of my room seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding in a rhythm that mirrored my own heartbeat. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, shapes that twisted and morphed in the dim light, always just beyond my grasp. I told myself it was the trickery of an exhausted mind, the consequences of too many nights spent chasing tales of ghosts and ghouls. But then came the knocking. A soft, persistent sound that echoed in the silence of the night, always 3 knocks, always from the same place, the window overlooking the storm-tossed sea. Each night I would rise, compelled to answer, but found nothing save for the reflection of a room that seemed to age with each passing hour, its walls closing in, the space growing smaller, more oppressive. Sleep became a rare commodity, snatched in moments between the knocking and the ever-present feeling of being watched. The hotel's corridors, once a source of fascination, became a maze of fear, the portraits on the walls watching my descent into madness with eyes that knew too much. My writing, once a source of joy, turned to frantic scribbles of a mind unraveling, the words a jumble of fears and warnings, of shadows that whispered in the night and walls that moved with a purpose I could not understand. I attempted to leave, to escape the suffocating embrace of room 413, but the hotel would not release its hold. Corridors twisted back upon themselves, staircases led nowhere, and every door I opened led back to my room, to the waiting shadows and the relentless knocking. In my final hours, as the walls closed in, the room shrinking to a point where I could barely breathe, I understood the true horror of the Grand Heirloom Hotel. It was alive, a creature of wood and stone, fed by the fears and madness of its guests. Room 413 was its heart, a place where reality bent and broke, where the shadows feasted on the minds of those who dared to stay. The knocking was a countdown, a herald of the end. When I answered for the last time, the window revealed not the stormy sea but a void, a darkness that pulsed with the hunger of the hotel. And as I stepped forward, drawn by a force beyond my control, I realized that the hotel had never intended to let me leave. I was to be a part of it, my madness a thread woven into its fabric, my soul trapped within its walls forever. The Grand Heirloom Hotel stands still, its rooms waiting, the shadows hungry, and in room 413, the walls move in the darkness, the window knocks, and the sea whispers tales of those who came seeking inspiration, only to find insanity. And somewhere, in a room that breathes and watches, the scribbled words of a lost writer flutter to the floor, a warning unread, as the door swings open, welcoming the next guest. Nestled in a forgotten corner of the countryside, shrouded in fog and surrounded by the wild, untamed beauty of nature, stood the Heartwood Hotel. It was a relic of a bygone era, its once grand facade now weathered by time, its walls whispering tales of the past. Despite its isolation and the rumors that clung to it like cobwebs, the hotel continued to welcome the occasional traveler, drawn by a curiosity for the unknown or a desire to escape the world. Simon, a writer in search of solitude and inspiration, was one such traveler. The Heartwood, with its history and secluded location, seemed the perfect place to lose himself in his work, away from the distractions of the city. He arrived one stormy evening, the hotel emerging from the mist like a scene from a novel, its lights a beacon in the darkness. The interior was a time capsule, each room meticulously preserved, the air heavy with the scent of aged wood and old books. The owner, a man named Mr. Winters, was an enigmatic figure, his eyes holding stories untold, his welcome warm yet somehow distant. Simon was the hotel's only guest, a fact that filled him with a sense of unease that he couldn't quite place. As night fell, Simon explored the hotel, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridors, the portraits on the walls watching him pass. It was then he heard it, the sound of a piano playing softly, the melody haunting, filled with a sorrow that tugged at his heart. Drawn to the music, Simon found himself in the hotel's grand ballroom, the piano playing of its own accord, the room empty. Fascinated and unnerved, Simon mentioned the piano to Mr. Winters, who simply smiled, his eyes clouded with a nostalgia that spoke of loss. "The hotel has many secrets, Mr. Simon. Some are better left undiscovered," he said, leaving Simon with more questions than answers. That night, Simon awoke to the sound of laughter and music, as if the hotel had come alive with the echoes of a time long past. The ballroom, he discovered, was filled with apparitions, guests dancing in a celebration that had no place in the present, their forms flickering like candlelight, unaware of Simon's presence. Each night, the hotel revealed more of its secrets to Simon. Hallways that led to rooms that shouldn't exist, doors that opened to reveal brick walls, and always, the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Simon's writing, once the purpose of his stay, was forgotten, replaced by an obsession with uncovering the truth of the Heartwood Hotel. Driven by a need to understand, Simon confronted Mr. Winters, demanding answers. The owner's demeanor changed, the warmth replaced by a cold resignation. "You seek answers, Mr. Simon, but are you prepared for the truth?" With those words, Mr. Winters led Simon to a part of the hotel that seemed untouched by time, to a door that had remained locked, its secrets untold. Behind the door lay the heart of the Heartwood, a room where the veil between the past and the present was at its thinnest, where the hotel's memories were stored, alive and pulsating with energy. "The hotel is a keeper of stories, Mr. Simon," Mr. Winters explained. "Every guest leaves a piece of themselves behind, their joys, their sorrows, their very essence. And some never leave at all." It was then that Simon understood. The apparitions, the music, the shifting hallways, they were all manifestations of the hotel's memories, trapped within its walls. And as the realization dawned on him, the door closed, sealing him inside. Simon became a part of the Heartwood, his story woven into the fabric of the hotel, his presence just another whisper in the corridors. Mr. Winters, the keeper of stories, continued to welcome the occasional traveler, the Heartwood Hotel standing timeless, a monument to the past and a prison for those who dared to uncover its secrets. And Simon, forever trapped within its walls, wrote his tales in the shadows, his voice joining the chorus of the hotel's eternal guests, his longing for escape, a note in the haunting melody that played in the ballroom, a melody that echoed in the night, calling to those who listened.